This is the China Hollywood Greenlight Podcast, episode 31.
And rolling sound. Quiet.
Here we go. Ready.
Speed.
Speeding. 120, take 7.
And action.
This is Karen McCann, the host of the China Hollywood Greenlight Podcast, a podcast about creating and distributing content for both Hollywood and China. If you like the show, please go to iTunes, subscribe, and leave a rating so other people can find this podcast. The more we work together, the more opportunities will be out there for everyone. Any links mentioned in the podcast can be found in the show notes at chinahollywoodgreenlight.com/podcast and look for this episode, which is number 31. Before I introduce today's guest, I'd like to start out with a motivational quote to encourage our listeners to continue on their path to achieving their own green light. And today's quote is from T.S. Eliot, and he said, "Only those who will risk going too far can possibly find out how far one can go." A quick update on what I'm working on. I launched the Writing Jobs page on my membership website, the China List. This is a new membership website to connect writers and producers in Hollywood and China. You can check it out at www.chnlist.com. Again, www.chnlist.com. Writers, if you join the membership, you can have free access to our private Writing Jobs page until April 30th, 2021. Producers, directors, talent reps, and creative execs, you can post your tailored request for specific scripts or writers on our private Writing Jobs page. It's free. Other news, I also finished my latest TV pilot called Real Justice. And real is spelled R-E-E-L, like in film reel. It's NCIS meets The Equalizer. It's about mismatched crime fighters going after crooks in the film industry. I should have the pitch Bible done in a week or so. Today's guest is Chris Nebe, a producer, writer, director who is working in Hollywood and China. His controversial projects have won him not only awards, but also death threats. No kidding. Here is the interview. Chris D. Nebe is a producer, director, and writer. He is the president of production company Monorex Hollywood. Among other movies and TV series, Chris Nebe is the creator of the internationally acclaimed and award-winning Mysterious China series, which is being called The Voice of China. The series is successfully broadcast on American public television. It is also available on Amazon.com and streaming worldwide on Vimeo and other services. He is currently in pre-production in China for the Hollywood-style movie The Barefoot Doctor. Also, he is in pre-production in Los Angeles on the feature film Fate. Additionally, he does several films about UNESCO World Heritage Sites in China for the Mysterious China series, as well as Going Green, an ecological civilization, and saving ecology through art. The Mysterious China series has been honored with over 70 awards from prestigious international film festivals. Chris has been honored with the Humanitarian Award, the News Person of the Year Award, the Fighter for Justice Award, and the Shanghai Golden Tripod Award. He is currently in post-production on the feature documentary Buddhism, the Ancient Wisdom. Well, Chris, thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you. And ni hao, Karin.
Ni hao. Now, I told the audience a little bit about you, but why don't you take a minute and tell us about yourself personally and your business?
I'm a German citizen. I'm not American. And my mission is to make the West realize and appreciate and understand that there is a new world order in the making.
Yes.
We realize that we have to live in a global village.
Right.
We depend on each other. We must understand and respect our diversity. and we should refer to the lessons of history and not ignore them. Unfortunately, I should say the white man has for the last centuries ignored those lessons, and it's still time to change. And it's really we need to reach out and take this opportunity to create a new world order based on peace and harmony and trying to create win-win situations for everybody.
Is now you mentioned rising in the East, setting in the West, that philosophy. Is that sort of that sort of leads to my first question? Is that sort of why you entered the China market? Well, the China film and TV market?
I did because, you see, I am, as a European, of course, we have we are more aware of the epic cultural heritage of China.
Mm-hmm.
And we subsequently, when you see the rise of China, there's no way to contain it. There's no way to stop it. There's only one way: to join hands.
A lot of our listeners are, some are very experienced, some are just starting out. But tell us about, for example, what you, so we can sort of understand what you do. Now, no 2 days are the same, but could you kind of tell us what are like 2 or 3 main tasks you do on a typical day?
On a typical day, I keep thinking all the time. No, but you see, the Mysterious China series is an effort to make the West understand China better.
Right.
Because for the Chinese, it's very difficult to present themselves, as it always is difficult to present yourself and talk about yourself. It's much better if a third party endorses Karen than when Karen says herself, "I'm the greatest girl around." Right?
Right. So you're producing, you're writing, you're developing these projects?
Yes. I write and produce all the films of the Mysterious China series myself.
Oh my goodness, that's fantastic. There's like 24?
No, I have a very capable associate, J.J. Osborne, who is the vice president and future president of the company. And there is not too much work because it's fun. I love to do that. It's my passion. And it's my mission because, you see, nobody else is doing it.
Well, there you go.
Nobody is doing it. And recent restrictions on activities of Chinese media in America have closed down many Chinese television stations, which were partially funded by Chinese government, or also were directly, like Phoenix TV from Hong Kong was directly from Hong Kong, and they had all to stop broadcasting.
Well, you got a lot on your plate. You're doing first. It's very exciting to hear the passion just comes through in your voices, and you even called the Mysterious China series is your mission. Tell us, how did you find your business partners, and how do you suggest the listeners find perhaps a Chinese producer or financier? Now, I know those projects aren't financed by the Chinese, but tell us what you think a listener.
I got to some. It's a long story to tell, but it sort of evolved one by one, and then it's provinces or city governments who realize that they have an advantage of financing projects like this because it gives them an unbelievable promotional publicity value in the West, because the films are being shown again and again and again because my films reach the hearts and minds of the American people. And there is nobody else telling them this because, yes, there is some big companies like National Geographic or BBC. They are showing some animal things and stuff like that. Very neutral, very, you know, so they are neutral and don't hurt any side. And I'm just showing the reality of how the epic cultural heritage of China, which is China's culture is the oldest in the world, and the socioeconomic thought pattern have created a very successful fusion in China, and propelled a people which, like 60, 70, 80 years ago, were had in hunger into a country, very well functioning country. Of course, nothing is perfect. Nobody is perfect. But to sit here and say, oh, they're communists, they're this, they're that, that is very stupid. Because they have created for themselves a system which works very well for them. And we should not forget that they are controlling 1.4 billion people.
Well, these Mysterious China series is you've got so many of them. How did you find your business partners to get those off the ground?
Because I'm known now, and I did a few films, which I did because I felt that there was so much injustice done to China in the colonial times. And I found several films, and I made films about this, and this we financed ourselves.
Okay.
And they propelled me to a certain prominence because I touched things which, interesting enough, actually the Chinese should have touched, but didn't. Oh. And they should have made those films, not some outsider like me. But they realized that, and one of them is a very, it's called Diaoyu Islands, the Truth, which has a history of 100 years past, where it was illegally annexed by Japan. And in 1945, Japan was told to give everything back what they illegally annexed or took from China. But since these three islands, little islands, no water, no people, were illegally annexed and they were not documented. So America, realizing the strategic value of these islands, took, after 1945, instead of returning it to China, what would have been the right way, they took over the administrative rights and refused to give the islands back to China.
Well, I can see where definitely your reputation precedes you because as you mentioned, you're making these projects, not the Chinese. So you're, in your own words, quote, an outsider. So I can see where you could attract business partners or et cetera. But that leads, and you mentioned the Diaoyu Islands. Obviously, that's a very controversial subject. That leads to my next question about obstacles. What obstacle did you encounter on a past project? How did you overcome it, and what did you learn?
Obstacles are of our cultural nature, because you see, sometimes people don't understand what's good for them. Sometimes people do not understand that subjects like this have to be raised in order to make the other people understand that something has been wrong and is wrong. And most of the time, people for various reasons or governments for various reasons do not like to touch something like that.
Yes, yes. Well, I think that you kind of hit the hammer on the head. That's politics is a big obstacle, and maybe your mysterious China projects are giving Westerners a view of China. So that sort of answers the question as far as how do you overcome this obstacle? It's huge. Well, your passion, your mission, is one way to overcome this obstacle, and I applaud you for that. And you sort of already answered my next question about problems that you would like to solve. These are big, epic issues that your passion is loud and clear, and obviously you want to open the Western, China's point of view to Western minds.
Of course, now it's much easier because if you can prove that the film I made about your city is showing for the 50th time in America in public television, that's something nobody can offer you. No money can pay you that can buy this publicity.
Right.
And I was very proud several years ago when I had a personal experience of why people appreciate this needed information. We were sitting in business class, and next to me was a couple from San Diego. Mm-hmm. And they were traveling the first time to China. And I said, where are you going? I said, of course, we go to Shanghai and Beijing, but we are also going to Dali. I said, Dali? How did you find about that city? Oh, we saw a beautiful documentary on San Diego public television.
Little did they know.
And it motivated us, we must go there. Dali is in Yunnan province, which is the southwest of China. Uh-huh. And it's a very, very beautiful old town on the crossroads of the Silk and Tea Road.
Right.
A long history. Used to be an independent kingdom, and is it's very well done. And what they did is, they didn't touch the old city. They renovated the old city, and the new Dali is a kilometer or 2 or 3 miles away. Mm-hmm. You have that old city complex almost untouched with the city wall and everything. And it's a very particular place because of the climate is very mild, and it's drenched in history, and it's something which you won't find easily elsewhere.
Well, that's definitely a niche, and it's great that people are learning about these beautiful cities. Thanks, partly, and thanks to you.
So I was, of course, very pleased and excited that I heard for the first time directly the effect.
There you go.
Of the film on people and the result, because economically, if you have 20 or 30 or 50 people who travel for that reason to China and go to Dali, they're spending a lot of money there. So,
that's right.
And for the benefit of the city.
Wow. It's like proof of concept right there, right in front of you, right next to you. Right. Now, in your bio, I did mention a couple of the projects that you're working on, the feature documentary, the Hollywood movie. You have great connections in China. What do you think the Chinese studios are looking for as far as like film projects or TV projects?
You see, as usual, they are, of course, interested where the big money is. Okay. Documentary filming is not big money. So where they want to go, they want to deal with the major studios, get access to major projects, which now has been dampened a little bit. It had a couple of years ago, before the Trump administration, it was a very hot issue, the Chinese involvement in Hollywood.
Right.
But then the Chinese government stopped it because they said, we don't want to do business being constantly blamed for everything which goes wrong in the world and being the big enemy. And actually, all we are doing is what's good for us. And again, nothing is perfect, but
right.
What China has done in the last 40, 50 years is unbelievable. Have you been there?
Yes.
You have been.
I've studied that.
It's unbelievable what they have done from zero. And they will do more because you see there are 1.4 billion minds, and some of them are very brilliant, who are waking up now and now have a chance to do what is right. And they are not to be stopped. And it's very foolish of the West not to reach out and try to work, because this is the Chinese mantra it's the mantra of the Chinese philosophy. It's the mantra of the Communist Party. Create win-win situations in peace and harmony.
So you mentioned earlier a minute ago that perhaps the Chinese studios documentaries might not be at the top of the list because it's not as you sort of intimated, not quote commercial enough. So perhaps the Chinese studios at the moment are looking for film and TV projects that maybe, who knows, maybe an action genre, maybe romantic comedies. Would you say that's sort of the trend?
I found it's very difficult because you have to take into consideration the Chinese film industry is heavily censored.
Exactly.
So censored also in the sense of what you're allowed to tackle. So it's not easy to find so-called crossover scripts. Hollywood is, of course, the cradle of filmmaking, of the world-class filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
And in Hollywood, the script is everything.
Right.
Which it should be. And so it's very difficult because the Hollywood writers do not have the experience to see something which is attractive for the Chinese, but also is attractive here. So we have the Barefoot Doctor, which is a professional written film about a World War II. And in World War II, the Chinese boast, because Chinese had Mao Zedong and it had the Republican Kuomintang government being parallel in charge. Later on, this resulted in a civil war after the Japanese left. This film shows a young doctor, because what the Chinese government did, because you must imagine that basically China is a rural agricultural nation first. It only has become a striving industrial nation in the last century. Mm-hmm. So, especially, of course, after the opening up. So the story is about a true Chinese hero, because they used to take young boys who had some interest in medicine, farm boys, brought them and trained them to give first aid and so on, and then sent them back to the villages as a village doctor.
Right.
And instead of called a village doctor, because they were so poor and had no shoes, they were called Barefoot Doctor.
Now in this movie of yours, I think I read there's a little love story.
I'm sorry?
And I think I read something on your website in this movie, Barefoot Doctor, that you're making. There is a little bit of a subplot, a love story.
A love story?
Yeah,
that's also there, yes.
Oh, of course,
Love
yes.
stories are
Of
always
course.
good.
Yeah, love stories are, that's always a safe bet. Always a safe bet.
But that was appealing to the Chinese
yes.
Film Bureau because it had a young, pure, poor Chinese facing the enemy successfully in a game of chess.
Okay.
No
there you go. And you can attract the chess players of the world. There is a huge audience for that.
Right. Basically, this young doctor had learned from the Chinese doctor in China, where he trained to be a medical assistant. Had learned the European chess, not the Chinese chess.
Right.
And the Japanese colonel who is going to raid his village by accident learns that this seemingly innocent Chinese boy knows how to play chess, and that Japanese colonel is a chess chess crazy. He plays by himself. When in the evening, has a table set up and plays by himself. So anyhow, and in that long chess, and the Japanese colonel says, "Okay, we play a game of chess. I win, I kill everybody, but I leave you okay. You win, I go away." And that, of course, was very appealing to the Chinese Film Bureau.
Of course.
Because it showed a young, pure Chinese overcoming evil.
So what I take from this is what perhaps other, if screenwriters are out there and they want to get into the China market, perhaps some genres or something they should include in their stories is, first of all, a little bit a subplot like a love story, and then second of all, you very intelligently included, either planned or unplanned, this niche audience that would appeal to niche audience. I mean, chess players of the world. So that's a smart idea. When you're making a story, always remember or think, who's my target audience and who automatically would be attracted to the story, not just people who love history or people who are keen to know more about China, but also just a niche audience like chess players. So good.
And there are millions of chess players.
Of course. Exactly.
And that's and in the West, this is an art film.
Right.
It would be running in art cinemas. And the second one, Fate, is a story about an American composer who, without knowing it, meets a Chinese girl on her last day in America. She studied journalism at UCLA, and they meet on the beach the last day of her stay in America because her visa is over and she has to go.
Okay.
And that's like a love story. And also it will help, it's geared to a young audience because it will show what Americans should know about China and don't.
Right.
And because it is much more difficult to understand China than it is to understand America.
Yes. Well, let me. This is fascinating information, and it's there's so much unknown about China, and I'm really happy to hear about your website, about your films, about Mysterious China, about these two projects you've got in development. But now I'm going to throw a trick question at you. Here's a trick question. What question did I not ask you that I should have?
No, you did ask me about the obstacles. And there are obstacles.
Yes.
Because while some cities or provincial governments or even the central government, because in the end, the films I make always have to have the approval
Right.
of the Chinese government.
Right.
Not the finished film, but the idea, the concept. If I have a concept, it has to be approved, because nothing can go out which is not approved.
Right. You have to
And
pass
so
the
sometimes
message.
you see you are dealing with, like in every bureaucracy, and being a German, we invented bureaucracy, and I know about bureaucracy very well.
Right, right.
So you find people who are just who would normally say, okay, great, let's do it.
Right, not that
Don't
way.
understand why I have to approach something this particular way.
Right.
To walk this fine line between being propaganda or just reporting the truth.
That is a
For
fine
example, I made a film called Tibet the Truth, which has been very controversial. It has gotten me death threats here.
My goodness.
Oh, yeah. It has gotten me death threats, and it has been very controversial because Tibet is a very, very, very complex issue. And it has a long history, and it's very complex. And also, most people, and nobody really talks about why Tibet is important.
Right.
Tibet is not important because they have the Dalai Lama. Tibet is not important because they have Lamaism there, which is totally different than Buddhism, as we know. Tibet is important because it's the watershed of all of Southeast Asia and India. If tomorrow the Chinese government wants to turn off the water for India, Ganges, Brahmaputra, Indus, Mekong, Salween, all these big rivers, that's where they start in Tibet.
Exactly. Yeah, it's obviously.
So it's a very, very, very geopolitically important. The Tibetans themselves never realized it. Nobody realized it. Only the people in power realize it, because basically China controls the water for India and Southeast Asia.
Yeah, that is extremely
and of course, their
strategically
own water,
important.
Yeah. Then, of course, their own water, Yangtze and Yellow River.
Excellent.
So nobody talks about it, you see.
Right.
Like in America, nobody really talks about real issues which are behind the very turbulent times we are facing now.
Exactly. And that,
they're always different than what you see.
Right. And you have to have passion. Obviously, you said at the top of the interview, it's your mission, and you're obviously very passionate about this. These issues are, first of all, let me just say, you're the first guest I've ever had that's had death threats, and I'm just speechless. This is just, of course, you're tackling very controversial subjects. So yeah, I get it. Now, we don't expect a lot of the audience to tackle these huge controversial subjects, but if you had some advice for those who aspire to tap into the China market. Now, granted, most of them don't want to go through it.
I think that's very important.
What would you suggest?
To understand these real issues.
Right.
Behind the big issue, to understand the real issue. It's not the Dalai Lama which makes Tibet important. It's nothing. It's that geopolitical thing which has made Tibet, since centuries, a place where people tried to get their hands on. Mm-hmm. Russia, Great Britain mostly. And so you see, everything has two sides, but there's always a third side. And the third side is the one which is really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, like you said, earlier, as far as perhaps, advice to the listeners, you said you have to walk a fine line. Obviously, you have to pass censorship. So, yes, that is, if you want to reap the benefits of getting into the China market, you definitely have to walk a fine line. And so that is
because we're
clear.
dealing in a different culture.
Right.
And today it's almost equal with American film market.
Right. And too big to ignore. I mean, they're you can't. Hollywood needs China. China needs Hollywood. So it's got to. We need to figure out a way to work together. I mean, that's just how it is.
And it's very interesting. And if we learn to work together and respect, I always like this reference to the global village,
right?
Where everybody has his little house, and in this house he rules and does what he wants, as long as he doesn't trouble the neighbor. If he starts to trouble the neighbor, that's wrong, because it's not necessary, unless there is a reason, but then this reason can be solved, again, in peace and harmony. It cannot be solved with violence, because violence does not get us nowhere. We look back in history and we see that violence is totally wrong. Right. And violence does not further anything. The only thing is to be in peace and harmony, to create win-win situation for both parties. And the Chinese do follow this. It's part of their culture, like like saying I have a right to carry a gun is part of the American culture.
Okay, now we're really getting into controversy here. Okay, well, now off air, my in conclusion, my normal question here is, would you like to share any social media details with our audience so they know how to keep track of you? Off air, you mentioned you're not big on social media, but you've got the website.
I have a website, but in China, it's very interesting. I was surprised the year before, because we have to. 2020 doesn't exist; it's a lost year.
I
had two short interviews on. They do it now on with a handheld phone.
Right. Yeah. Right.
And in both cases, just these short interviews had over 600 million hits.
Wow.
Yeah, because the Chinese have a very active internet, and they're very active on that, and I had over 600 million hits. This is, of course, unbelievable, but it is. I wish they would have all given me $1.
There you go. Well, we can always hope. Great. Well, Chris, I'll put your website address in the show notes so people can keep track of your work and learn about these fantastic projects that you're doing. But let me just say thank you, Chris, for coming on the show today. It's been fascinating.
Thank you very much for the compliment. Appreciate it.
And we'll see you at the premiere.
And I wish you a very good day. Thank you. And success. I think your concept is a very interesting one.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And now for my 3 key points and 3 takeaways. Number 1, propaganda or journalism. Chris's pro-China projects covering the Diaoyu Islands and Tibet are controversial to the extreme. To avoid the label of Chinese propaganda, he raises money for his projects outside China. And that is probably the only solution for these subjects. Don't take Chinese financing to make something this controversial. Number 2, documentaries. Documentaries are, according to Chris, an uphill battle in China. As Chris said, the Chinese studios are looking for something more, quote, commercial. 3, romance. Romance is a good bet. Chris's period film, The Barefoot Doctor, has a romantic subplot. This is always a safe bet, since romantic subplots will attract a wider audience. Takeaways. Number 1, crossover scripts. These are hard to find, but David versus Goliath stories resonate with a worldwide audience. You can also see my previous blogs, How to Make a Chinese Hit, or 7 Ways to Bulletproof Your Script for China. Just go to the China Hollywood Greenlight website and click on blogs. I'll also put links to these blogs in the show notes. Number 2, the power of the Chinese internet. Chris mentioned an interview he did with a smartphone got over 600 million views in China. China has over 989 million web users. One smart move would be to get publicity for your projects on the Chinese internet. I wrote about top Chinese internet companies in my blog, How to Sell Your Web Series to China. At the bottom of the blog post is a link to China's top internet companies as well as China's top web series. That page also has additional links to each web series director, producer, and stars that you can track down for a possible collaboration. Number 3, peace and harmony. Chris mentioned the need for peace and harmony with China. He mentioned the global village and how neighbors shouldn't cause trouble with other neighbors. If there's a reason for trouble, it should be dealt with peace and harmony. Now, before you all send me comments about China's problem with dealing with its nearest neighbor, Hong Kong, the national security law, or China's supposed, quote, debt trap diplomacy, unquote, with developing countries, let me say this. My podcast is about fostering collaboration in the entertainment business. I invite guests from all over with different points of view. Guests are welcome to share their views and advice on how China and Hollywood can work together in a mutually beneficial way. I'm open to hearing from a variety of guests. If you would like to suggest someone, please leave a note in the comments. That's the show. Screenwriters, producers, directors, creative execs, and talent agents, please check out the China List. This is a new membership website to connect writers and producers in Hollywood and China. Just go to www.chnlist.com. Again, www.chnlist.com. Writers, if you join the membership, you can have free access to our writing jobs page until April 30th, 2021. Producers, directors, creative execs, and talent reps, you can post your tailored request for specific scripts or writers on our private writing jobs page. It's free. Well, that's the show. Thanks for listening. To show your support, please go to iTunes, subscribe, and leave a rating so other people can find this podcast. And I'll see you at the premiere. Bye. 一会儿见.